Welcome, one and all, to this special episode of This Is Going to Hurt, where we are going to talk to this very guy from Canada, Stefan Verstappen. Seen a lot, done a lot, and is willing to share his knowledge and wisdom about his adventures all around the globe. Welcome to the show, Stefan.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, kind of talk about a little bit about your kind of what set you on to this path. You moved abroad and to China, I believe, and what happened there, and how. And
Well, just like a brief background on my history, I would say I was a survivalist. Now they call it prepper, but back, young man, they hadn't coined that survivalists, and I was turned on to it because the which would have been the late 60s, early 70s when I was a kid. We were constantly threatened with nuclear annihilation. It was in the books, it was in the TV shows. We thought that it was going to be nuclear holocaust, and then there's going to be like nuclear winter and absolute destruction. And so I began looking into, well, how do you survive that? And I began quite early. When I was 13, I enrolled in the Outward Bound program at school. This was an extracurricular activity. 3 times a week, they would take us up north into the woods, into the bush. Actually, a very large, and up there they wilderness survival, archery, how to shoot a gun, how to cook on a campfire, how to provide shelters, how to canoe, how to rappel down a cliff. Of course, I don't know if you guys know what a... Yes, yeah.
Where you're tying the knots and building it together, or you're being mobile through it?
No, that's where you're as you traverse the treetops. Yeah, it's a pretty scary thing, especially when you're afraid of heights, which I was. And it's basically they tie our climb up, and a rope course is where you have to climb, like 60 feet across 2 trees, hanging onto a rope. Now, in those days, we didn't have safety helmet harnesses, and so if you didn't hang on 40 feet onto the rocks below, and you'd probably be dead. So, I have to laugh at all the extra precautions nowadays, where in some cities they require you to wear a bicycle helmet for walking. So we did this rope course. It would never allow anything like that today. It's with you, yeah, it was dangerous. Scared the shit out of me, but you know what? It built courage and it built toughness. And so, anyways, the Outward Bound program, they don't have them anymore. Well, they do, but it's very rare and it's very wide. They would never do what early 70s, 1970, 71. For example, at the end of the year, one of the tests was they would... Our camp, the Boy Scout camp, was very close to Algonquin Park in Ontario, which is a very famous provincial park. The Canadian artist, a group of 7, went there to paint. And my favorite artist, Tom Thompson, he lived in the park and painted it. A.J. Casson, 2 of my favorite group of 7 artists. So they all lived in the park. It's beautiful. It's wild. Would take you one by one. They would canoe you out into the woods, Now, in order to camp, you have to be at least 5 miles away from the nearest road. So you're really out in the bush. That's the park regulations. And they would leave you there for 3 days with 3 matches and a knife. That's it. We'll come back in 3 days and pick you up. Do that nowadays, that kind of a test. But it really helped because after I graduated, I started mountain climbing and hiking and canoeing, and every year to Algonquin Park, it's sort of a ritual trip. I do it because that's when the bugs aren't so bad. You go now, July, you get eaten alive by the mosquitoes. I'm sure it's the same way there in Finland.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you have the mosquitoes, and it's probably the worst time to be out in the bush, right?
Probably right about now.
Yeah, right about time. And we had everything. Oh my God. Flies, deer flies, horse flies, sand flies, and of course the ever-present mosquito. But
actually, I want to ask something. Do you have in Canada these small, very small black? I don't know what they are.
No
insects,
seams. We call them
small chunk out of you.
Yep, we have those.
They are horrible.
Yep, we call them no-see-ums because you can't see them.
No-see-ums.
I don't know what they're really called. I think it's a version of the black fly, but anyway, so a couple of years later, I got a job, survival, for the Toronto Boys, which was a halfway house for teenagers that were being released from prison. And so they had to go to a halfway house for like half a year or a year. And they ran a summer camp to take these, teenage park, my old stomping grounds there, and teach them how to canoe and tent and camp and cook and basically recreate the outward that I had gone through. So that was a great experience. I saw firsthand, and I've been, every chance I can get, and that need for young men to go out into the forest. It's primal, and especially for Nordic, West European men. The Chinese, they don't care about. You don't see any Chinese. And the blacks. I've never seen a black in a canoe up there. Never seen one. So it's typically a Western Nordic Europe, but probably because our evolution was in the great forests of Europe, and but it also helps to build confidence in young men. And when I see men these days, and I use the term men loosely, because these young guys, they don't know what it means to be a man. They confidence that you need to be a functional male. So you take these inner city street gang, and they were all white, by the way. This was before diversity in Canada. So all the criminals that I took out to the forest were all white. But so you take, they were, Irish, Polish street gangs, that kind of stuff, right? And you take them out of the city and you put them in the forest for a week, and the changes that come over them, they're confident. They walk with a swagger, and to kind of prove themselves by being and swearing and running their mouth and all that. I mean, when you are truly confident, you don't need to tell people about it. Tell everybody, oh, I'm so great, I'm this, I'm that, because you are that. You don't need to say it. You live it, you embody it. And so again, like I said, I men in the forest, it should be a, and at some point in your training, young men should spend 3 days, 2 nights alone in the forest. It's a little bit dangerous, but not that dangerous. we've never had any problems, but you could say slip on a rock, break your leg, and for 3 days, you can't build a fire or feed yourself or anything like that. It could be horrible. And in those days, we didn't have satellite phones or cell phones. We didn't even have radios we didn't even have a flare that they could set. If you got hurt, you still days for somebody to come and find you. So in that sense, it was dangerous. Like I said, nobody ever hurt themselves. But it's important that you expose young men to danger. Just a little bit dangerous. But there's always just a slight threat of danger. Men need to be exposed to danger. It's the same thing I often say. Most aware and most awake are those that have faced death. You know, they were in an accident, they were stranded, they were terminally ill and had to overcome it. And facing death is what, of course, the Zen masters always advised too. And of course, writers like Carlos Castaneda, death is your advisor. Big slap in the face, wake up, wake up. Now, yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I want to add is that you mentioned that going to the forest is dangerous. And I've talked to some immigrants that are living here in Finland, and somehow we got to that kind of stuff, and they said they the Finnish forest. And the same thing has happened with the generations in Finland, because I was born in early 70s. We used to go summertime to pick up cloudberries and to the wild, and especially those who have born in the 90s and after that, they don't go to the forest anymore that much.
Yeah, and well, that's forest really teaches you a lot of lessons, and it's vital. It's a spiritual experience for me. I don't go to church, but I do go to the forest, and I would forest experience to a church experience much more favorably. And again, it's for the men. You know, they have done everything they can to weaken us. All right, masculinity, and we're evil, and well, that's all done on purpose to destroy our confidence and to weaken us and to make us passive. Because, well, look at what they're doing. They're murdering us by the billions, and yet they're standing up and fighting. They're killing you, folks. They're killing you, you know, but still, death hasn't slapped. It's a slower death, you know. So nobody's awake yet, you know, or very few people are awake.
That's the word, democide. There's
Yes.
even, I believe, a University of Hawaii even made a study about that, the democide for the 20th century. Pretty shocking. I can't remember exactly the numbers, but it's basically more than all the wars combined.
Yes, I've studied that too. I think 80 million, but also up to 150 million people murdered by their own governments. Yes, it's democide again, and they're getting away. Again, the men in our society have been weakened and undermined and sabotaged. And one way to get it back, which is what I've just been talking about, is like an outward bound program. You know, I was a great experience. You know, it taught you a lot of wilderness skills, and the outward bound program was a little bit more intense. Like I said, we had the rope course and for 3 days. But anyway, so continuing on with that, as soon as I turned 18, I bought my first firearm. I became a firearm owner. Back then, all you had to do was show a driver's license. There was no test, there was no licensing. So that gun is a ghost gun right now. The government does not have a record of my first gun. Then I became very interested in martial arts, the same lines as I wanted to be a warrior. A warrior is, but in the classical traditional sense, a warrior was tough, independent, critical thinking, and could handle himself in a fight, could survive in the woods, but could also dance and do flower arrangements. Those were the traditional warrior attributes. So I thought, well, I had already grown up as part of a street gang and had been, in a handful of schoolyard brawls. So I started taking martial arts, and here in Canada, I went to Chinatown in Toronto, the oldest kung fu school in Canada. And because I started off with karate, with judo, but I was attracted to kung fu because it had more of a tradition. I wanted to go back earlier in time. I was under the belief that the older things were. But kung fu also has a lot of traditions in common with shamanism. All the animal styles, that's shamanism, that's dancing the animal. And the same thing is origin legends. The guy goes out into the woods. Here we go again. You got to go out in the woods. There you meditate and you contemplate, and then you get a vision. And that vision could be a tiger or a crane or a snake or an eagle or a praying mantis. You get a vision of some, and then you learn how that animal's fighting strategy operates, and you mimic its movements, and then you come back and, wow, now you're a white crane master or a tiger master. But that's exactly the same story for shamanism, all the spirit quest. Again, you go out, you fast, and when you're in the woods, an animal will come to you, and that will be your guardian spirit, and it will, bestow qualities onto you. So if you're out there and you see a bear comes to your camp, then, oh, well, you will have the strength of a bear, and if it's an head and lands on you on the log next, oh, well, now you will have the vision of an eagle. And so it's shamanism, and that's what kung fu is too. It's shamanism applied to combat. So I really like that. And after a number of schools, myself and my kung fu brother, who was a shaman, he was one of these white, really immersed himself in Aboriginal culture, Native American culture. He lived on the reservation. He married an Indian. I always say princess, even though. But anyways, and her uncle was the shaman for the tribe. It was the Crow tribe, and so my kung fu brother learned how to speak Crow, and he was a wood. Like, if you think I know how to survive in the woods, he had a trapper's license. He trapped beaver in this big swamp called the Menacing Swamp. He took me out there a few times. It's 15-foot tall swamp grass with little creeklets running in between like a maze, and he would trap the beaver and skin the hides. And in the fall, they would bring the hides to the Hudson Bay Company. It's still operated since it was first founded in Canada 200 years. So that's where you bring the pelts. And so we decided, let's go to China and learn from the great masters. And so I did a lot of research. In those days, it was before internet. So I had a library and get the yellow pages from Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Japan. And then I went through the yellow pages and looked and got the and wrote them all letters. We're coming there for a few months. Okay, do you teach foreigners? So we got 3 reports for Shotokan school in Japan. The other was for a praying mantis school in Singapore. And the third one was for a Hungar school in Hong Kong. So I didn't want to, we both didn't want to go to Japan. Shotokan, it's a nice martial arts style, but it's really kind of, it's good for beginners. And praying mantis, well, that's a little bit too exotic even for me, And Singapore, I didn't know anything about Singapore anyways. So Hong Kong, but Hungar, because I had studied Hungar already, or in Chinese, it's I'd already studied it in Chinatown at the Hong Luk Club. So I said, well, and I already taught my Kung Fu brother what I was learning at the Hong Luk Club on the weekends. And I said, this week we learned this, and I would teach him. So we had a background in the Hong Chuan. And so we went to Hong Kong. And little did I know was Kung Fu master in China. His master was Lam Sai Wing. And Lam Sai Wing was quite famous. There's a book published in the 1900s with illustrations. You probably Kung Fu magazines. You probably have seen illustrations. And Lam Sai Wing's master was Hong Shi Guan. Now, Hong Shi Guan is portrayed in 100 Chinese movies. All those Jet Li movies, and even way before that, because he was China's biggest kung fu hero. Hong Shi kind of knows him. So technically, generation removed from Hong Shi Guan. So the kung fu we learned was like the purest form of kung fu. It was unadulterated by being, in a Western country for too long. Anyways, I'm going on too far about this. Master Chan Hong Chong, and we lived in the apartment. He was a millionaire. He owned several of the restaurants and several businesses. And he would take us to other schools, and other masters would come and visit him and pay their respect with them. We had some of these famous from Golden Dragon and Monkey Style and Eagle Claw, and they would all come in, pay their respects, and we'd say hello to them and get them to teach us something. So now that brings up into the modern era. 20 years, I realize, as do many people realize, that we are at the end of our society. The world is coming to an end. The world is over. Western civilization is going to collapse. It is collapsing. It's already in it. And, well, what do you do to survive? Well, survival skills, but for people thinking that move out into the woods, think again. I have great respect for nature. I have so much respect for nature that I would never conceive of going and living in the woods for a year by myself. I'm going to do that. And not too many other. So what can we do to survive? Well, back to prepping. I've always been a prepper or a survivalist. I always had, extra food in the house and fire. In the meantime, I also became an instructor for St. John Ambulance, which is a Commonwealth equivalent of the Red Cross. I used to teach the local police department, fire departments, and so having some medical skills is a good idea. And I continue to teach to this day. Our community, we have workshops. As a matter of fact, there's a workshop today. But my other buddy's going to teach it. It's going to. So I continue to, stay up to par of my emergency skills. And So prepping is very important right now. People need to have 6 months worth of food stored, water stored. They need to have a good, not just one of those store-bought first. They're okay for paper cuts, but for any serious injury, you're gonna burn through everything in that kit in about 3 hours. If there's trauma and those little kits. So you have to have a robust medical kit. Also communications. You need radios, you need ham radios. Because when it all collapses, I'm assuming the power grid will go out. And that can go out for any number of reasons. It could be an EMP, it could be a coronal mass ejection from the. It could be hackers getting into the system. It could be sabotage, guys sabotaging the
cyber polygon, in other words.
Yeah. Cyber polygon. It could be all those things. Any things could take down the grid. And in most of the world, if the population is without electricity for a week, it'll be absolute anarchy and chaos. No grocery stores. And I've been through enough power outages. I know the first things that close down is the grocery stores. They can't take debit card. They can't take credit card. Yes, they have backup generators. Those backup generators, and then that's it. If they work. I was in a brand new apartment building, and they had a power outage, and the backup generators didn't come on. I called property management later, and they said, "Oh, well, they been maintained, and nobody filled it up with." So there you go. So how many of these emergency generators are really going to work when the power goes out? Because they need maintenance, and people aren't spending the money on maintenance. Up with diesel or gas, whatever they're taking.
Last winter, Texas had frozen over and they went to start their own generators to find that it was actually too cold to.
Yeah, I have a friend at Texas from Canada. I would have liked to go with her. I would have loved to go to Texas. I tried to get out of Canada. They wouldn't let me in. You see, I'm not a third dealer, so they won't let me in. I'm just a quiet, grandfatherly type teacher and writer. So yeah, persona in the US for me.
What actually happened? Because I remember you told on your own podcast that you are moving to the US, and then you kind of.
It's a long story.
They didn't let you in.
That the person that wanted to hire me was not an accredited university.
Okay.
So they turned me away.
So if you university that wanted to hire you, would they let you in?
I'm thinking now. The only reason I had to go this route was because you couldn't enter the United States without a vaccine passport. So the only way around, and it was like a 2-month window before they closed that down, is if you were a worker. So if you could get in on a work visa, then you wouldn't have to get vaccinated. So that's why, because I'm not getting that. So we tried to get around it. Letter of employment, and I filled out all the forms and everything like that. But the whole system was really fucked up because you're supposed to be able to go in advance to the U.S. consulate and make your application there, and then they would give you an answer. But because of the whole thing, you couldn't do that anymore. So what? Show up at the border, and the border patrol control officer would make the decision then and there whether they would let you in. So it's a coin toss. Do I go at the border or go ahead, go on in? Like I mean, in the time I'm sitting there waiting for an answer from these pricks, about 10 million entered the country without a vaccine. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there, sitting on my thumb while these guys go, well, we can't let you in. The first guy, one supervisor came in and he said, no, we can't. It. And supervisor, I could tell just by looking at him, was an asshole. And there you go. So there's no, and you can't go to another border crossing and try again. And even coming, my own customs, Canadian customs, time. I drove from the border checkpoint in Canada to the border checkpoint in the US, which is a half mile of highway. Even get off the highway, there's nothing there. And he comes back and he says, oh, well, do you have any guns or drugs on you? I said, where am I going to get guns and drugs? In the quarter mile it takes me to drive from the US Customs office to here. Of course I don't have guns and drugs.
The bushes.
Yeah.
Like from the bushes. Yeah.
No, but there is no bushes because there's a wall and then there's a 30-foot chain link. Then there's barbed wire on top of that. It was like a science fiction horror movie. It really like, as I'm driving towards the border, all the fences and everything come up and the barbed wire and then the Klieg lights, these big bright lights. And then as you're approaching the border, you get your picture taken, infrared camera, and then another light, these things flashing in your eye, they're taking your photograph. What a fucking nightmare. When I was a kid, a teenager, we'd drive from Canada to the United States. There was like a little toll booth type of hut there. And they'd say, where are you going? We're going to Buffalo. Where are you from? Toronto. Okay, go ahead. That was it. No passport, no visa. You didn't even have to show your driver's license. But now it's like entering the forbidden zone of some, and anyways. So, but the thing is, I did have drugs and guns. I left all my guns behind, but I had some, because it's legal here in Canada and it's legal in New York. So I don't know why the Canadians are asking me if I got drugs. Anyways, I had some hash.
Are you still looking at coming into the United States? End up playing out in your favor?
Because I ended up in this small town here in southwestern Ontario. And I fell into a group, a community. Awesome. I will do a video shortly on what it is that we're doing, but we have a really high functioning community, good people. We're making a lot in a lot of different areas to become self-reliant, self-sufficient, so that when the shit does hit the fan, we've got our communications team. We can speak to people all over the world now, including other members within our community. Nutrition team where we food from the local farmers through a local farmers market distribution center. And the local farmers here are Amish and Mennonite. It's all healthy, free range food without hormones and whatever else to feed the livestock these days. Got lots of water. That's never a problem. We've got a security team. We've got 8 guys with AR-15s and pistols and military background. And there is a problem with looting like that. We can get a hold of each other by the radio, and we can all show up. And the thing with the gangs and all that, you fire a couple of shots in the air and they'll run away anyway. So it's not that we're going to get into running battles with the military. We would never do that. It's like everything else. Every have, a drug problem. Every small town across all of Canada across all of the United States. And I've driven through the United States a number of times, in Canada too, recently, just about 10 years ago. And every small, they have they're homeless, they're meth addicts, sleeping under the bridges, these little tent cities, everywhere. It is a horrendous, it's eating up our entire country with all these homeless meth addicts. And listen, when the meth addicts run out of meth, they're going to get a little bit antsy. Right now we have, services, we'll give them food and give them a tent, and they sleep under the bridge. And, I guess, the drug supply is still going. But if it's shit hits the fan, they don't get the drug supply, they're going to start breaking houses and going through the medicine cabinets. Then yes, our security team can probably be effective at scaring these guys off.
Now, I know that you haven't gone through the ultimate guide to forming communities. There's quite an insistence on the filtering process, the people in, watching out for psychopaths. Is this a group that you had a few close trusted people and you started growing, or is this a group that you found, vetted them for what they're doing as a group, and joined because of that?
Both. So the reason I moved here was because, well, listen, and so I'm in Niagara Falls with a U-Haul trailer full of, my crap and the cats, and I have nowhere to go. I gave up my apartment. I've got nowhere to go. And I had most of my friends and family. Well, I never really had any family. I had a couple of cousins. Talk to them. Cousins in Holland, I occasionally communicate with. So no friends, no family. Most of my friends stabbed me in the back, I'll be honest with you. Especially because of, my conspiracy, and because I wouldn't get the vaccine. Oh, you don't care about people, you're going to make me sick. No, idiot. If you've got the vaccine, then you should be fine. I don't need to wear a life jacket to prevent you from drowning. Anyways, what can you do with people like this vaccine crisis, this a IQ test. It really was. And it has revealed all those people that are too dumb to think for themselves. It's revealed them. And they didn't like me, and they stopped talking. I've heard that same experience from just about everybody else that has refused the vaccine. Now, all the people, no one is vaccinated. That's the first filtering process. Because if you're too dumb, if you're so dumb, then as part of the community, you're too stupid to be of any use. So I had one friend left. I mentioned her all the time, Dixie and her husband. And they allowed me to, sleep in their basement for 6 weeks while I looked for an apartment, because now I have to look for an apartment again. And this is Christmas time. There's not many apartments available. And so Christmas, January, I stayed with them. I lived at their house, and they treated me very well. We had birthdays, New Year's. And I thought, well, where am I going to go? What difference does it make now? But I have a certain criteria of where, and what I advise those who hire me to help them with their is a small town. You stand out like a sore thumb, and everybody sees you're a stranger, but not so big that you're going to start to get in all the big town problems again. The town is 13,000. It's actually the perfect size. We got all the grocery stores and pizza outlets and hardware stores, dollar stores. So we got all that there, all that kind of. And but it's big enough that, you know, I don't stand out like a sore thumb. Even though now, after only a year, I bicycle into town. There's usually half a dozen on wave at me. They already know me. Then Dixie said, "Well, do you want to come and see our community?" I said, "Well, I don't know, because I've had a really bad experience trying to form. I failed all the time. Mind you, I was trying to form these communities in Toronto, and Toronto City, and form a community with liberals. They don't get it, and they don't want to be a part of it, and they will persecute you. They hate your guts if you suggest that, you know, you don't follow along with the government on. There's something wrong with you. So she said, "Well, no, it's pretty good. Why don't you come and try it?" Now, the community was up and running for only 1 month when I attended the first meeting. Now, because Dixie brought me. They knew Dixie. She's a legend in the small town here. She's always, you know, devoted herself to community, homeschooling, teaching herbal plants, how to find herbal plants in the surrounding forests, and gardening. And so she's a local legend, and everybody in the community knew Dixie. And so meant she endorsed me, and therefore I was accepted. Now, you may think it's because, well, they heard about my work with community, might have heard of my book. Actually, nobody heard of me there. Canadians don't follow me at all. I don't sell books in Canada. I don't know what it is about Canadians. Just a little bit too pussified. They're just so liberal. I mean, they don't think they're liberal, but Canada has been liberal for so long. There's already 3 generations in that liberal mindset. So they might even don't realize, no, you know, everything you think and say, you're full-blown communist. I hate to break it to you. But of course, they don't know that. But their attitudes, you know, Marxist, socialist, communist. So no, Canadians don't follow me. Canadians don't like me. And to be honest with you, I don't like Canadians most part, because they're liberal. You know, they take their kids to drag queen story time. You know, they applaud. They think that's great. You know, they got. Anyways, that's what it is. It's like.
I wanted to ask you, Stefan.
Yeah.
You know, groups. There were size from 5 people to 11, and they all fell apart. And I've analyzed happened. Come to this conclusion that, first of all, the things are going too well. I mean, you can get food from the store, you can get social security is still, so forth. And also, I think people haven't done the work between their ears, what they are going to actually get about.
Yeah. I heard the same thing from, well, at the Zoom meeting I had, where
Yeah.
Joshua said the same thing, that the group is sort of drifting apart, falling apart, because the big virus hoax is over, and now they no longer feel the need to work together and take to guard now. The virus is going to come back big time. They already said this stuff. You know, Bill Gates and all these guys, oh, well, the next virus is going to really wake them up. Now we'll show them. And so we know they're planning on doing this again. Maybe not as many people will go along with it, but still the vast majority of people will go along with it. So they're then, you know, all the other evil schemes they have. There's dozens and dozens. There's strategies within strategies, poisoning the water, poisoning the air, supply lines for any kind of food, and trying to get rid of gasoline and cars, and so that yeah, you're walking around with soy milk, and that's all you got. We and the 15-minute cities, even here in the area where I am, the county I'm in, there's a couple of, I mean, there's small towns, and they're saying, "Oh, we're making it into a 15-minute city." Well, in 5 minutes, you can walk across the whole town. Talk about 15-minute goddamn cities. And people go and protest and all that, but the town council is in on it. They've been bought and paid for. They're not changing nothing. They're not changing any of the bylaws. Choose the 15-minute city. So we see there's a dozen different things they're trying to do, and people are going, well, we're allowed to walk around without a mask, so everything's okay now. No, it's not okay now. It's getting worse every day. Economics and finances, the politics and the programming and the brainwashing, and it's getting worse every day. What do you mean? Relax our guard. I think they partly did that for people to do exactly that. Because I was surprised when the pandemic is officially over. Really? Now it's officially over? Okay. And then everybody went, okay, well, don't have to worry about that anymore. So it's a bad time to drop your guard. As a matter of fact, now, because there is the lull before the storm. That's what we're going through now, is the calm before the storm. So instead of relaxing your guard, you got to double your efforts, really get down and build those communities. And the other thing that annoys me too is, like you said, Yarmo, okay, so, and we can leave, but it's not about leaving the group. It's about knowing people you can trust. So,
Yeah, and also I think that when you form a group, you have to do things together, that social cohesion between the member. And that's why I think that you have mentioned many times and written in your books that there should be regular meetings, and also sort of like a field trips. Is something, or just you're going to spend a day in somewhere doing things, socializing, and also building that community
yeah,
spirit.
absolutely right. So our community week, I think weekly meetings are essential. And it gets to the point now, if for whatever reason something else comes up and you have to miss a meeting, you really miss being part of that community. A lot of things together. There's like continued ongoing learning program. So myself and another member of the medical team, we teach all the first aid courses. So every month there's another first aid module, right? It's 2 hours. It's at the rest. One of our members owns a restaurant, and she lets us use it on a Sunday afternoon before the crowds come in. So we'll have our workshop there. Also, we have people come to the club, and every week somebody puts on a present. All kinds of presentations on how to plant seeds and get them ready for the spring planting, how to grow medicinal herbs, turn medicinal herbs into extracts. You need 100% alcohol, which you can't get in Canada, but how to it was this weird thing where tea, and then the tea forms this kind of layer on top of it, and I forget the name of the
Kombucha,
tea.
like
Huh?
a SCOBY, like a SCOBY kombucha.
Kombucha, yeah. They up on how to make kombucha, exactly. And the scobies, yeah, you have to reuse the scobies. And how to pickle, how to can. And, our communications team will, first of all, everybody got a ham radio. They all got one of those Baofengs, right? And actually, they work really well. Communications, the head of our communications team comes in with the laptop and he programs everybody's Baofeng with the laptop so that we're all on the same frequencies. So as you we have our rest frequencies that we can communicate on, but then we also have the UHF frequencies, and we also have access now. This months, a lot of these guys got their ham radio licenses, but now we're able to tap into the repeaters. So the last time we had a community workshop, our team leader programmed all our radios to now also be able to tap into the repeaters. And so with this tiny little handheld radio here in my small town, I can everybody in the small town as part of the community. So going through the repeaters, communicate to our sister community, which is like 30 miles away. And you can communicate to people all over the world, provided they have a ham radio too. So we have continuous ongoing on different subjects, radios, and a lot of agricultural and health. We have a health team, which is separate from the medical team. And the health team deals with home nursing, cures and teas and massage, pressure and things like that. And they'll put on demonstrations at one of the meetings. So we have a 2-hour meeting every week. And 1 hour is taken up with business, what's going on and what do we need to do. It'll be something like, well, we need somebody to come over. The weeds are getting kind of out of control in the garden. Volunteer to come over and do some weeding on Saturday, and 6 hands will go up, and that'll be that. We need to fill up the water cistern so that we can have a drip feed system for the garden. Who can come over and help us fill up the, hands go over and they volunteer their time. And then the other we spent was some form of presentation from one of the members. And when you have a lot of members, you've got a lot of people with skills. So like with me, it's first aid and emergency medicine. With other people, it's horticulture, agriculture, how to make colloidal silver. So the program is really good. The other thing that we do is we have quite a lot of social events. So last Christmas, for example, let's start last Christmas, we had Christmas dinner. So we took some money out of the kitty. We do some fundraising events. Again, that's one of the social events that we all come together on, like garage sale or weenie roast, and we'll come out there and we'll volunteer, and whatever money we earn from those events, we put into a kitty. It's never more than about $400 or $500. Then listen, we need feeder hoses to do a drip system in the garden. It's going to cost us $200. Anybody object to us taking $200 out of the kitty to buy the hoses? Okay, done. So they said, listen, we like to buy 3. It costs us $150. We buy them from the local farmer. And so we bought 3 turkeys. And then remember, 3 people, households volunteered to cook the turkeys. And then we had the free space, the use of one of the churches, in the basement. Typically a church will have and a kitchen in the basement and kitchenette in the basement and tables and chairs, enough for all 100 members to come for Christmas dinner. And so we did, the rest was potluck, and we all brought our own dish and then cooked the turkey. And so that was Christmas dinner. We also have potluck dinners quite often, usually once every 2 months. And it'll be at the clubhouse. The clubhouse also has the benefit of being surrounded by open space. We have a little creek nearby, picnic table. And so we had one of the potlucks. We had a big pot on a tripod over the fire pit. And if you know Stone Soup, the story, it's like everybody brings something to throw into the soup, right? So whatever you got, tomatoes and maybe, you know, a hunk of beef or whatever, into the Stone Soup, we cook it up and everybody shares from it.
I want to tell you a little story
Yeah.
about the mentality of the group that I was in. Setting up this field trip to the forest, where I was planning that we maybe go to a few miles into the forest, and then somebody gets hurt or something like that. And as a crew, to build a stretcher and carry that person out. And I
Yeah.
wanted to do that because you don't know how, actually it's quite hard if you are not
Oh, yeah.
used to it, to do it in a forest where there's no paths or anything. So I wanted to do that, mention it to the one member like week before. And
Mentioned that you're going to do a drill.
Yeah, that kind of a drill.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
a few days I had to go, suddenly people started to message me that, oh no, I got something, you know, I can't participate and things like that. That's when I knew that this group is no good.
Yeah. No, I know. That's why I'm always saying people need to, you know, especially men need to, at an early age, get used to being in the forest. It's not scary. It really isn't. Well, have I been spooked a couple of times when I was alone in the Sure, sure. I often tell the story about the swamp monster. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning, going through the swamp, right? It was completely by accident. I went at the last minute. I couldn't go to my regular campground. This guy's place there. They still have regular outfitters, was sold out. So anyways, I'm so happy to get a canoe. I get in the canoe and I'm off down the river, and I realize I have no idea where I'm going. I don't have a map. I said, do you have a map? They said, no, we're all sold out of maps. I said, well, what? I said, well, just go about 3 miles down the lake, and on the right side, you'll see a river entrance. Then go through the river, and at the end of the to another lake, and straight in front of the river, there'll be an island, and it's a very nice island to camp on. Okay, well, I'm going through the river. The river turns into a swamp. So now it's like a 3-foot wide meandering creek. There's 6-foot tall bulrushes on either side. You can't see anything. It's like a maze. And the guy told me, he says, oh, and don't by our friend in the river. I went, what? Don't be spooked by our friend in the... Anyway, so, and of course, by this, I've smoked a big joint. It was a full moon. I love being in the forest during a full moon. You can see everything. It's like daylight. Excuse me. I'm pretty stoned. I'm paddling. I'm doing the Indian paddle, which is, you know, where you circle the paddle in the water. So you make no noise. You're quiet, right? I like to be quiet when I go through the woods. And 4 feet away, goes up 6 feet in the air. And I nearly jumped out of the canoe because it was just out of the blue. And my first thought was, is throwing rocks at me. No, that's the first thing that went through my mind. Because where did that come from? It sounded like somebody found rockets in the lake right beside me. So yeah, that spooked me a little bit. And then a couple of minutes later, another splash went off. This was a little bit closer, but now I already figured it out. I should have figured it out right away instead of thinking. But you know, you smoke a little bit of pot, you're in a swamp. The mist is just starting to travel over the water, you know, because you know, early in the morning the mist starts. It's like a river on top of the river, and I'm all alone there. So I guess that's why I thought Bigfoot the first time I heard that splash. But it was a beaver. He was trying further along the river. Sure enough, there's the beaver burrow where he lives, and he was just trying to scare me off. He came really close to the canoe and slapped right next to the canoe, but I just kind of petted him on the back, you know. And so that's what the guy meant. Afraid of our little friend up there, you know. But it's okay. Obviously, he's been down that river a few times, and he knows that the beavers live there, and they're going to try and scare you off. But yeah, so what I mean to say is that it can be spooky at times, at night, and you're by yourself, and then you hear things in the woods, right? My experience is the louder the noise, the smaller the animal. It's probably a squirrel.
I'd just like to ask you something, just to circle back to
Sorry, go ahead.
your community you've got going on there. So I'm in the northwest of England, pretty much on the border with. So I don't know if you've ever been to Wales, but lots of you know, forests and hills and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff going on there. And I a fair few communities that are trying to from the ground up sort of thing. So and I have sort of been trying to connect with some of these communities that are struggling, some of them to take off.
Right.
And similar to Jarmo's experience, you know, you do come across some people that get sort of mentioned.
Yeah.
But so where I realized that some of the groups where they seem to stall a bit, or people start to lose interest, it seems to be egos that sort of jump out of the woods, you know, that sort of spook you, but you're not in the woods in this point. That's just figuratively speaking, right?
Yeah.
Community with, you know, you've got all sorts of, I don't want to use the word experts because it seems to be completely misused, especially during this pandemic stuff. But so with, how do people keep themselves in check? Is it aspect, do you think, or like a spiritual expert or a philosopher that sort of digs it into a bit of the ego aspect?
Yeah, good question, because I often tell people, leave your fucking opinions at home. You know, everybody's got an opinion. Okay, all right, but yippity yap about their opinion, that, and that causes a lot of friction. Like, for example, with me, and again, when I first joined the group, nobody knew who I was or what I was doing, or you never heard of, you know, my efforts at creating community. But you would think within the community, I would be like an expert, right? I don't offer my opinion on things. I keep my mouth shut. Now, some of them came across my YouTube channel on my. Now they started to know a little bit like who I am and what. And then if they ask me some advice, yeah, I'll be happy to give it. But I don't offer my advice on things. It's, you know, whatever the community wants to do, let's discuss it. But I'm not the expert. I can always give my opinion. So obnoxious. You get these guys that, oh, they got an opinion on everything. Let's talk about this. Well, I got an opinion on that. And, blah, blah, blah. And then they clash with other opinions. So it's an ego thing. But I think there's several contributing factors to why our community is working. One of the contributing factors, most are like 50. We've got like 6 young families that are in their 30s, early 40s, and they have kids. And but the majority of the people are 70, 80 years old. And the older generation, people my age, time. Like I said, with my Outward Bound experience, that's, that could never happen now. Never happen. Too dangerous. But, I remember being men, and they were always polite. They wouldn't fight with each other. They wouldn't argue. They'd never swear. I swear more than any of the old guys I ever. And they take charge without being obnoxious and abusive. And so the attitude for most of them, we're adults. That's it. We don't need to bicker. We don't need to fight. We don't need to form cliques. We don't need to clash. We don't need to impose our. Now, spiritual, most of the members are Christians. They know I'm not a Christian, and they never try to convert me. They don't shun me. They don't look down on me because I'm not a Christian. So they're Christians, and that's their religion, and that, better Christians than Jews, and or Muslims, or New Age, the liberal New Age people. Forget about, you can't work with those people. So no, they're just like, they're not fanatical Christians. They have a prayer group within the community that gets together half an hour before the regular meeting, and they go to one of the surrounding buildings, patio or in a little barn. They say their prayers and all that. That's fine. I don't have anything against that. They don't have anything against me. So, but it add a bit of glue to things, right? Because they do have a spiritual commonality with Christianity. And for me, that's fine. People being Christians and atheists. Atheist either. I'm not, I'm more, the big spirit kind of guy. There's a God, but he's not going to listen to your prayers and get you that little redhead that works in store. Anyways, so that is a unifying factor. The other thing too is that it's a rural area. So there's like a small town every 10 miles, every direction you go, whatever road you take, there'll be a small, or like one stop sign, 4 houses on the corner, maybe a gas station, maybe a grocery store. And it's scattered throughout the whole county, but the county is all farms, and a lot of Amish and Mennonite. We see going down the country roads here all the time. At every meeting, there's usually a couple of buggies that come by the road past the clubhouse where we have our meeting. Clippity clop. And we wave to them, they wave to us. They're very nice people, the Amish. And and then the other thing is that everybody in the community either lives on a farm now or has grown up on a farm. There's a different mentality with rural people. You don't get that with the city people. You don't get that with the people are more prone out. For example, the local grocery store routinely donates hot dogs and hot dog buns and hamburgers for all our charitable events. They give it to us. We're not registered as a 501c3 and all that crap. They know who we are and they donate that. Or for a big town hall meeting, donate the space. The local grocery store has a huge space above their store. They donate it. And what was I hearing the other day? Oh yeah. The other day, a woman, the Facebook page for our town, the Canadian Tire store, which is like our hardware store here in Canada. And she bought a couple of items, but they were pretty big, and she could only item at a time. So the manager of the store said, "No problem. Where do you live?" And she told him, and he said, "Okay, I'm bringing it to your house." So delivered the other items she bought to her in no charge. Do you get that in the big city? You know, you go shopping at the big Walmart store in the big city, and you can't carry it all out the super. And the manager says, "I'll drop it off at your house." Never happened, but in a small town like this, that kind of stuff happens. They help each other out, and that's the rural mentality. You know, because if farmers, they had to rely on each other. Okay. So if Farmer Brown broke his leg, there's within the community that are going to go over his cattle and help hoe the fields or help harvest the wheat. They look after each other, and that's a tradition in the rural communities. So it's just a sheer stroke of luck that I ended up pure accident, but because it is a rural community, people have that mentality. You'd never see that in the city. Same thing with our community too. There's been a half a dozen times when members either got sick or they were in the hospital or they were in a car accident or her store burned down. She was selling medicinal herbs and things like that, and the apartment next door caught fire and it burned her store down, and she had no place to. People in the community came together out, and we delivered meals to them. They came home from the hospital, and they can't really cook anymore, so we brought it up at the meeting. Who can go down and give bring a meal, like a meal on wheels kind of thing, or a potluck dinner? Who can on Tuesday? Hands would go up. Okay, hands would go up. Who can go on Thursday? Okay, you guys. Okay, who can go on Friday? Okay, Saturday. I think we should be good with just supplying them food for a week, and then they'll be okay. We've done that half a dozen times now with different people. Volunteered to cook a dinner, drive to them, and we split it up days of the week. How many can come on Tuesday or Monday or Wednesday? Everybody's volunteering, putting their hands up, doing this. It's all for volunteer. Would that ever happen in a big city?
Nope.
No, it wouldn't happen in the big city. Oh, look, Tom, down the road, get to the store. How many of us can go bring them a dinner? Nobody in the big city would do that. So again, I'm trying to listen. I'm analyzing this myself too, because I'm still working on the book, and I've stories from people that they're failing at create this kind of a community. And so I'm analyzing, well, what are we doing right? What are they doing wrong? What's the difference? Are there more things I should look, more events, more psychological tactics and all that? So to answer your question, Justin, to the group by a group member that will. So I have a psychopath test. We don't need to fill it out. First of all, they'll be on like a probationary period for 4 weeks. And a couple, some of the founding members might have them over to their house for dinner or a couple of beers and just talk to them, suss them out. Use your instinct. With most of these psychopaths, and I've got a whole video on how to detect psychopaths. Because I've studied the subject for so long, I could spot a psychopath a mile away. That's why I can't follow news or politics and all because I'm going, look at these goddamn, how can you people believe these psychopaths? They look evil. You can't judge a book by these sons of bitches. They look effing evil. They're psychopaths. How can you not see that? How can you not? And oh, well, so-and-so, Mr. How can you not tell this guy is a freak, a pedophile, coke snorting son of a bitch, a psychopath that showers with his 12-year-old? How can you miss that? So between me and a few of the other members, that have a little bit more life experience, if a psychopath were to try and join the group, they'd be spotted pretty quickly. So, yeah. So, anyways, I'm isolate what the secret to success is for our group and why other groups fail, and part of it is like you and Yarmo. Oh boy! As soon as there's any threat, oh, now we're scared. Now we can't listen. The people in our community is a tough life. All kinds of things go wrong on the farm. They get injured all the time. They have cattle and livestock that get injured and die, and the weather conditions and they're all tough. They're not scared of a little overnight hike in the woods.
Yeah, and you can't let fear sort of guide you, because I mean you haven't got time to be scared. If you're preparing for your own survival, I mean you just got to get on with things in life and face reality, really.
Absolutely, AJ. You got to face the reality, and that's something. But listen, we're programmed not to face reality. Look at what's going on. The smartphones, the video games, the computers. We're constantly looking at a screen. We're sitting on our ass in a nice place. We're not facing reality ever. And most people today can't face reality. Like you said, they get frightened about any little thing. Oh, we're going to, a drill. Listen, I used to do those drills with St. John Ambulance all the time. Our drills would take place in the city center. We'd close down 2 or 3 roads, the local fire department and the police, and 30 people pretending to be casualties. And we'd have the volunteer fire department and the volunteer ambulance. And we would go in there. We'd even set fire to different areas. We'd set a fire pot to do the right triage and how to evacuate these people and things like this. Is not something really radical, Yarmo, to something like that. Where let's pretend somebody's got a broken ankle and how we're going to get them out.
Common sense.
Yeah, don't have to do it all 3 days or whatever. For a couple of hours, see what it's like if we had to do something like that. Could we work together? Can we improvise the stretcher? I would recommend not a stretcher, but I forget what they call them. It's a papoose. You drag it. You don't have 4 people carrying and have 1 person pulling it. And you drag it along.
One thing that I wanted to ask about the recipe for success is that you talk a lot about, making for the group that everybody signs. Well, I think it's a good idea, but I've came up this idea that to make it more substantial, if everybody puts some sort of a like down payment for the group, like let's say like $500, $1,000, and if you get thrown out from the group, you don't get that back. but if you
Mhm.
leave voluntarily back, so that could be some sort of like in the group.
Yeah, I have that in my book on the circumstances under which a person leaves to what amount of money did they get back, right? Our group does not have a constitution. I and it's different because we really know each other better. Like, I mean, we're all adults. Like Yarmo, if I came over to your house for dinner, I wouldn't ask you to sign a medical release form, right? I would say, I'm going to go over there and eat. I wouldn't require you to provide me with a list of ingredients and indemnity and all that kind of stuff, because we're adults, right? But if the community is going to have monthly fees, or if you want to have to join the group, yeah, the institution and some bylaws would come in handy so that they know that, well, okay, I'll donate $500, but if I don't like it, I can leave in 6 months, get my $500 back. Okay, fine. Or, it's better if there's some rules established so that people can't say later, oh, well, I didn't know. When you're sharing duties, this is the case with every organization, right? It's the Pareto principle. 20% of the people are going to, 80% of the people are going to kind of see how it goes. It happens every group, every dynamic. That's always the case. 20% do everything, other 80%. So, but on the other hand, you can't just let the 80% do nothing. In our group, we have an understanding. It's not, but number one, you have to belong to a team. So we have nutrition, we have medical team, health team, communications team, security team, and you need to attend one workshop held by that workshop. So medical team will have our medical workshops. Now people from anybody can come, but if you're on the medical team, well, really, you should come to one of these meetings at least once every 2 months. Right? So I would put that in the rules. If you have to devote a certain number of hours, you have to attend a certain number of meetings, and just coming to the regular weekly meeting, you also need to kick in an hour or two a month helping out in the garden, raising the chicken, whatever other activity that needs work on. So you could put that in there so that even though the 80% is still going to kind of be laid back, you can't just let them do nothing, right? So they have to come to the meetings. They have to come to the team training program. And it's, again, we don't take attendance or anything like that. We know. Where's Joe been? I haven't seen Joe in 2 months. Well, if you haven't seen months, well, we're probably going to drop Joe from the roster. But before we do that, we would call up Joe, make sure everything's okay, because he have help. Maybe his car broke down, he can't get to the. So we'll go and talk to Joe first, before we drop them, and we'll do everything we can to help them reintegrate in the community if he needs something. But
Yeah, something that I
Go ahead.
noticed that I was in these groups, I was the task man. I was the one who came up what we should do. And after a while, I started to push these ideas to them that, hey, if there's something, please say so we can do it. And the result was that nothing came up from the other members.
Yeah, I know. You see, percent of people are born with any type of leadership. We used to call them born leaders. And so that means you're always outnumbered 8 to 1 with people that just have no clue, have no leadership skills, come up with any ideas. So you would want to do then, Yarmo, is say, have them vote on it. I think we should do a field trip, a weekend field trip to the forest, and we're going to camp there 2 nights. And I think we should run an emergency drill. Who's in favor of going for the camping trip? Put up your hand. Who's in favor of running a drill while we're there? Who's available to for the trip? Put up your hand. Them and ask them to give you feedback. It might go a little bit better, but I know what you mean. Story of my life, you know. I'm always the guy. Let's get the band together. Let's go on a camp. Oh, let's go hang gliding in Colorado. Let's, you know, and I'm always the guy that's doing all that kind of stuff. Everybody's like, well, let's travel through Europe. Too young, my parents won't let me. You know, it's been like that my whole life. Let's go for a week camping. And this is when we were 15, and my best friend was allowed to go. And he said, you know, because all the other parents were too young for a week into a forest by themselves, you know, they'll die, they'll get killed. And but my buddies was allowed to go, and he said, you know why I was allowed to go? I said, why? He said, because my mom said, going, then you can go. You know, I've always had that kind of a reputation, like, boy, you can trust me. If I say you'll be okay and we can go, then even the parents will give in and give permission to do things like that. But I do you think I've, you know, benefited? No, people don't like you. You intimidate people. Oh, Stefan's scary because he's always thinking of things in accordance with what everybody else thinks. Yeah, okay, yeah, I know. Oh, radical thoughts, conspiracy theories. He doesn't want to get the vaccine. You know, it's been my story my whole life. To be honest with you, I take my isolation and ostracization as a badge of honor. Some guy said, nothing popular is true. Nothing true is popular. Yeah, you know, like I don't have 100,000 subscribers. I put out content that is real. It's not clickbait. So I'm not appealing to, you know, because if you're too popular, it means there's something wrong with you. Independence and critical thinking. You will be on your own, Yarmo. You're on your own, AJ. You're on your own, Justin. Right? You are always going to be the lone voice in the wilderness. Always. Never gets any better. But you know what? Jay, you just flex your muscles and say, yeah, well, fuck you guys. I live the life the way I want to live it, according to my own understanding of the world and my own ethics and morality and judgment. And I don't need a crowd behind me. I will do it whether you're there or not, because that's what I do.
I'm really curious.
Go on, Justin.
Okay, I just wanted to kind of tie something in and make a note here, because the ability to do that, I believe, is really influenced by these skills message, which I appreciate that you're talking about.
Yes.
You know, actually going through Boy Scouts here in the United States. My father was a Boy Scout in Texas back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And he'd say, you know, it is absolutely not used to be. So he actually stepped in to give a more authentic experience. I worked at a camp for a couple of summers. I I had the unicorn experience of organizations for my day and age. I'm mid-20s now.
Yeah.
And what's going
Because of
on
your dad.
is thankfully.
Yeah.
And what's the solution if everything is getting so wussified and men aren't become warriors and everybody's just confused about, and it's a recipe for disaster if we don't have strong men. So how might we reintroduce skill sets and rites of passages like that?
Well, in my book, The Master's Guide to the Way of the Warrior, I talk about that in there. So it's actually a very good book. Of all my experience with war. I've chosen a name. I already have a URL dedicated to that name. And I have what I want to do. It's called Renaissance. But I'm not on the internet or anything like that. I got nothing up there right now. But this is my thinking. I want to create kind of an umbrella organization that will reintroduce a classical education, a Renaissance education, make you now a Renaissance man is, well, we can give a couple of examples. Leonardo da Vinci was a classical Renaissance man. What a lot of people don't know is that he was an equestrian and a sword master when he was younger. So a Renaissance man is somebody, yes, you need to study philosophy and history and science, and you need to study anatomy and art and music, and you need to study wilderness survival, and you need to be a martial artist. Now, in the classical days, these people went to tournaments, they went to, and they fought with live swords. The last remnant of that was the classic Prussian Schlagen ritual that they went through, that Prussian college students went through. That's why so many early German officers had that.
It was mensur called, I believe.
Huh?
Mensur fencing.
Yes.
They had this huge scars across.
Yeah, they had these huge scars across their faces from fencing with live swords. And they wore goggles and aprons and protective clothing on their arms. And the winner was whoever got to cut the face. And so a lot of these, German officers, Prussian officers, had these big scars on their face. That is sort of like the remnant of what a classical education. Yeah, you have to study philosophy and history, that, but also you had to be tough physically. They studied archery and horsemanship, sword fighting. One of the earliest mutual aid societies was called the Foresters. They're still around to, and up until 1890, one of the entry requirements to get into the Foresters, and again, it's a mutual aid society, was demonstrate your skill at sword fighting, club fighting. So, that's just to become a member. So before you could become a member, you had to get in the sparring arena with a sword, and you had to defeat, a few opponents to show that you knew how. And that was the classical education. So Renaissance Lodge would seek to recreate that, and I would try and incorporate instructions, how to do it, how, and especially focusing on rite of passage ceremonies. For my Kung Fu club, rite of passage, what I called 100-man kumite. So when you wanted to, kind of graduate from beginner into advanced Kung Fu, you needed to spar 50 guys, one after stop. So I didn't have 50 guys. So what we would do is I'd have 20 guys, and each guy would go twice, 1 minute rounds. That's in the middle, that's going through this, has to rest. You got to fight 50 guys, one after the other, without a rest. And it would take 1 minute rounds. So 50 guys would be like 50 minutes. And you have to look, the strategy and tactics are different. You know, you tend to be more defensive when you're in that position. You have to save your energy because otherwise you won't make it to the 50th guy. But the thing, intense and exhausting. That's what you need for a rite of passage. I mean, once you're done, you know, 50 people. I mean, this is like, you know, in Sparta, you know, you fought off 10,000 Persians. Good for you. Yeah, you pass. So rites of passage, it could be different types of things. I like the 3 days in the woods. I like you have to fight 50 guys. That. Another rite of passage could be, we'll get together around the campfire and everyone tell a story. Everybody has to tell a story, but it's got to be a good story. So you have to organize your thoughts. You have to learn about drama and delivery and maintain interest of the and you know, you're going to be the center of attention. So you tell a story for 20 minutes, half an hour. There's lots of different things we can do to create rites of passage for men and young men and the women too. You know, I had women go through the 50-man. So they didn't fare as well, to be honest with you. They got really upset. It's very intense. You know, I had a couple of them cry, which made me feel really bad. But listen, you volunteered. You knew what this was about. You've seen it done before. But I still felt bad, things like that afterwards. But that's how intense it is. So it doesn't have to be seriously dangerous, but it does have to be somewhat dangerous. Or it could be something like an orientation test. Here's a map. You've got 8 hours to make it to the final location. And you have to follow the map, you know, 18 degrees north, go for 100 yards. There you'll see a tree. On the tree will be a blue ribbon. Stop at the blue ribbon, take another reading from the compass. East, 1,000 yards. There you see a rock. When you get to the rock, you take another reading. Now you're going to go northwest again. You're going to go 2,000 yards. You know, there you'll find a tree at the top of a hill. Take another. Do this course. Morning, the end of the day, you're going to end up walking like 15 miles, and you're going to have to read the country, right? And all you're going, a map and a compass to get to your final location. It's fun, but it's not easy either. You do have to know what you're doing. So there's lots of. I'd like to try and turn this into sort of like not a franchise, but a turnkey operation that people that want to establish a Renaissance lodge and start, you know, around that kind of training and education. Anyways, it's just a thought. It would be a lot of work for me to create this organization. I still don't know where I stand on it, but we need something, guys, right? Like they've already destroyed the Boy Scouts. Justin, like your dad said, it was a lot different than it was in the 80s, right? Why? Well, we know why, because they infiltrated it, right?
Well, listen, we've been going on hour and a half at least. So we're starting to close.
We're at 1 hour and 38 minutes. You guys ready to call it?
Before we do, Stefan, where can your work, connect to what you're into, and learn more?
Sure. My main website is China Strategies. That's one word. .com. And that has everything. I named it after my first book, which was published in 1999, called Strategies of Ancient China. And back then, the internet was still a new thing. Everybody said, "Oh, you got to get a website." Okay. So I just named it after the first book. But people think I have something to do with China. I don't. It's just the name. But I which is dedicated to the work I'm doing with, called formingcommunities.com. And that'll have my course on there and my writings and videos and things like that. And either of those two websites, chinastrategies.com, formingcommunities.com, and on YouTube, it's Stefan Verstappen. Clicky names, right? Everything is always just my name. And those are the two websites. Thanks for asking, Justin.
Thanks for joining on to our show.
Thanks.
It's been a real pleasure.
My pleasure
Yes.
too, guys.
Thank you, Stefan.
You're welcome. And if you want to do it again, okay.
Sure.
Much
Sure.
appreciated.
I'd love to.
Yeah. And good luck with your communities. I hope I was able to, like I said, I'm still on the learning curve too. And I'm trying to figure out what makes this work, why doesn't it work? But the one is that we're out in the country. People are just more caring, more giving. They really are. I lived in Toronto for most of my life. I could walk down the street in Toronto, nobody says hello to me. Nobody knows me. I've been in this small town now I go into town. Hey, Steph, how you doing, guy? Oh. People say hello to me like they know who I am. They recognize me. Yeah, I'm the guy with the. Oh, they recognize me, even though they're not friends, they're not subscribers or whatever. They just know me from seeing me around town.
You're the guy that looks like Bigfoot.
Yeah, that's me. So it's just a different attitude. So, I do the consulting, prepper consulting, and people are always asking me, well, I want to go to Mexico, go to Costa Rica, I want to go to Thailand and all that. The answer to all that is, yeah, it's great until you run out of money, and then you're the gringo. I'd rather my own people in my own country than go to another foreign country. Yeah, I lived in Thailand, beautiful country, love it. Like they say, the Thai are the nicest people you can buy. The shit hits the fan, right? Back. Yeah, Mexico's great. I got a lot of people there. They love it. They sing the praises of Mexico. It's more free. It's more open. There's more people. Okay. And when shit hits the fan, so I tell people, just. And the best thing is a small town surrounded by farms. We got farms everywhere. Since probably they're going to be facing in the near future is famine. The local farmers, they know us. So when they're starving, we'll still be able to get milk. We'll still be able to get eggs. Still be able to get produce. So small town, farming community. That's all I got for now. All right,
Incredibly
great to
valuable.
meet you guys. Having me on the show. I wish you all the best. And let's do it again. And add up your questions. Feel free to ask them, and we'll talk again soon. Bye bye.
Yeah, keep up the good work, Stefan.
Thank you,
Bye
Stefan.
bye,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you, Stefan.